We're recording.
Thank you for joining the RTC Freeway and Arterial System of Transportation Operations Management Committee meeting. Chair Eastman, staff is ready for you to begin the meeting.
Thank you. Good morning. Chair Tim Reisman for the record. I'd like to call to order the June 4th, 2020 meeting of the Freeway and Arterial System of Transportation Operations Management Committee. RTC staff will begin with a roll call of committee members, introduce staff on the line, and also touch on a few housekeeping items.
Thank you, Chair Reisman. David Gloria, Management Analyst for the RTC for the record. I'll be calling your name in alphabetical order. Please confirm your attendance as I read your name. Vice Chair Joe Damiani.
Present.
Mario Gomez.
Present.
Masood Javid.
Aye.
Eric Hawkins.
Here.
Joe Norby.
Here.
Chair Tim Reisman.
Present.
All right, thank you. Please note that we have a few RTC staff on the line for today's meeting. This includes Mr. John Penuelis, Senior Director of Engineering, Mr. Brian Hoff, Director of FAST, and Ms. Maren Dubois, Management Analyst, will be reading public comments. We also have Ms. Denise Inda from the Nevada Department of Transportation and Ms. Ati Abad with Atkins North America with us on the line. As the chair mentioned, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. When Chair Reisman asks for comments from the committee or calls for a vote, please remember to unmute yourself before speaking. Remember to state your name for the record before providing comment. Be sure to mute your line if you are not speaking. Voting will be done verbally. The chair will call for ayes and nays. If there are no nays, then the motion will carry. If there are nays, then a roll call vote will be required. In the event of a roll call vote, please wait for your name to be read to provide your vote. The chair will call for any comments or questions after an item has been presented. Thank you, Chair Reisman.
Thank you, Mr. Gloria. Mr. Hoff, for the first item, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Chair Reisman and members of the committee. Brian Hoff, RTC Director of FAST for the record. The first item on the agenda is to conduct the first citizens participation period. On March 22nd, 2020, the State of Nevada Executive Department issued Declaration of Emergency Directive 006, which suspended the requirement to have a physical location for public meetings. Pursuant to Directive 006, and for the health and safety of the community, this meeting is being held telephonically. To allow for public participation, the RTC is accepting public comments via email at publiccomments@rtcsnv.com. Comments can be submitted to be read aloud or to be added directly to the written record. Ms. Maren Dubois will read the public comments received by the RTC.
Thank you. Chair Reisman for the record. This is the first time set aside for public comment. This time is limited to comments on items included on the agenda. Comments will be limited to the first 500 words, with the remaining words to be included in the written record. Do we have any comments?
Thank you, Chair Reisman. Maren Dubois, Management Analyst for the RTC for the record. No public comments have been received thus far. Chair Reisman, that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Moving on, Mr. Hoft.
Thank you, Chair Reisman. Brian Hoft for the record. Item 2 is to approve the minutes. The minutes are in order and ready for approval.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
Joe Damiani, RTC. Move to approve.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hoft.
All right. Thank you, Chair Reisman. Brian Hoft for the record. Item 3 is to receive the FAST status, activity, and call status complaint reports. I will go ahead and provide a verbal summary of the reports and then allow time for any comments or questions afterwards. So I will begin with the maintenance and comm group reports. So some of the highlights on the FMS side were several system acceptance tests for various projects. This includes the US 95 corridor between I-11 down to the California border, down in the vicinity of Laughlin, and that is completed and looking at notice of acceptance shortly. System acceptance test, or SAT, for the new DMS2, which is located at the Beltway and Hualapai, and also detectors in that area. Also some work along US 95 in the northwest between Durango and Kyle Canyon Road. That is nearing completion. We are working with Kimley Horn and NDOT to begin posting travel times on neon gantries. We've been working with the font size, the signs in there, being large, we want to make sure that it's a good view and clearly conveyed the messaging. So we have been making some updates to the font size, and we'll be testing that out and checking in with folks for comments on that. Several fiber locates that have been done. The NDOT migration project, so this is working with the contractors to update fiber panels at Hub 18 and the TMC, and then do installs along I-15 between St. Rose and Prem. On the AMS side of the house, lots of work with the kit software and cameras, camera names being taken care of, new circuits created to include CCTVs along Charleston, Tropicana, and Lake Mead Boulevard. We did some work, found some damaged fiber in Mesquite, have been working with City of Las Vegas and their vendors on DSRC activity in downtown. I'll touch a little bit more on DSRC activity in the technical update, a few items down during this meeting. So there was some damaged interconnect downtown, and have added some RISE cameras to various intersections along Sunset and replaced some bad Layer 2 switches in North Las Vegas. On the fiber team, plenty of work for them as well. We've been installing fiber along 6th Street for City of Las Vegas. We've been testing fibers out of Hub 18 down in Prim. I've also been doing redundant path work between Hub 9, Hub 10, between Hub 9 and Hub 10, and also between Hub 9 and Hub 1. Continuing on with more fiber activity. There's going to be some network outages due to the construction project right by the Traffic Management Center. The I-15 Southern Beltway project continues, and so we're making preparations for that. We want to make sure that we have proper redundant paths there. We met contractor out in Boulder City. There's a new fiber run going on out there to go along with a lot of the construction out there. There was a fiber hit at Maryland and Karen. There's also been some splice verification along Nellis at Stewart and Nellis and Cheyenne, and some splicing in the I-15 Spring Mountain on-ramp area for the NDOT Video on Demand project. Moving on to the signal crew, the traffic operations crew, both here in the control room and out in the field, have continued lots of support for the various events and activities going on, the continued food banks and activities, the supporting the camera use and other items related to some of the recent protests that have been going on. We continue to work with the controllers as we wrap up our transition between the I2 system and the ATMS system. We're working with those last 20 controllers. We've been, for the first, when we concluded the April OMC meeting, we were busy with reducing and modifying cycle lengths, or running more and more of the plans in free mode. We are now starting to bring different plans back online. Some of that has begun to occur down south in the eastern St. Rose area. We've done some signal modification along Frank Sinatra Drive, kind of the back of house area, as some of the resorts have been mobilizing for today and the upcoming days as more things start to open up. And have also been working with North Las Vegas, City of Las Vegas, on some activities related to detector camera upgrades, Project Blackjack, and then also installing some Bluetooth readers up and down Eastern for some work that we're preparing to do in that location. So those are the highlights from the work that has been occurring for the past 2 months. And are there any questions or comments that I may receive? Hearing none, I'll turn it over to Chairman Reisman.
Well, if there's no more comments, we'll move on to the next item. Mr. Hoft.
All right. Thank you, Chair Reisman. Brian Hoff for the record. Item 4 is to receive the Nevada Department of Transportation Fast Intelligent Transportation System Operations Report performed as part of INDOT's contracts. Ms. Denise Inda from INDOT is here to provide the report. Ms. Inda.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman and members of the board and Brian. You all should have received a copy of our report. It's up on as part of the presentation. I'll just cover a couple of highlights from it today. Brian provided a great update about some of the efforts that are going on in conjunction with Project Neon and the ATM system. Moving down, we have an adaptive lighting effort that we're working on. We're working on the initial study to develop standards. Standards will be developed to a certain completion point, and then we're going to actually put 2 pilot projects in place. One will be an urban installation and one will be a more rural installation to test out the different components and qualities of those. Those actual installations will enable us to finalize the standards, and then NDOT will have standards in place for future adaptive lighting installations throughout the state. We're coordinating with FAST for the urban installation, and Lonnie and Ray are going to be participating in helping us with that. Next, I wanted to give you an update on the wrong way driver system, or wrong way driver notification systems, I should say. As you might remember, as part of the FHWA approval for use of the red rapid oh boy, now my brain is going blank. The retro-reflected rapid flashing beacons. We have to perform a study for 3 years on the red RFBs. Kimley Horn has been retained to help us with that evaluation and analysis. In conjunction with that, we are working to develop a standard for installation throughout the state. We're currently working through a testing process to test various vendors and systems, and then we're going to use that to develop our standards. Once we have the standards in place, we'll be continuing to install wrong way driver notification systems throughout the state. In the interim, in this 3-year period where we're evaluating the existing red RRFBs that have already been installed, we'll be installing non-experimental solutions. And then after the evaluation is complete and we know what works best in Nevada, we'll be moving in that final direction. Whatever it may be. I also wanted to mention that we're planning to hold a public competition for submitting suggested messages for our DMS signs. These would be more the safety related type messages. And so we're kind of ready on that, but we're waiting to move forward with that initiative at the right time. And then I wanted to make a correction. We noted here when we put our report together that we would be having a TIM meeting in Southern Nevada on June 25th, but we've done a little bit more investigation. And even though, as the governor has eased restrictions during phase 2 and groups of less than 50 are allowed to meet, we're still not holding in-person meetings, and we're going to push those back hopefully till and hold something in July, but we're going to be looking really closely at what the best approach for meeting might be, and we certainly don't want to increase the risk of any of our first responders, emergency responders, field personnel by pulling them all together for a meeting. So that's that. what is in our update is not current, and there will not be a June meeting for Tim in the Las Vegas Valley. So that's all I wanted to highlight today. I'm more than happy to answer any questions right now during the meeting, or if there are follow-ups, happy to provide anyone with additional information.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the committee? If there are no questions or comments, we will move on to the next item. Mr. Hoft.
All right, thank you. Brian Hoft for the record. Item 5 is to receive a presentation from Atkins North America, updating the fast visioning roadmap and providing information on transportation systems management and operations plans, also known as Dismal. Mr. John Penuelos and myself will provide background, and Ms. Atiabad with Atkins North America will provide the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Brian. Again, John Penuelos for the record. I think we could go to the next slide here. Get underway. Very good. So why are we here? We have some exciting things to share with you today. For those new or newer to the committee, to get you up to speed, back in late 2017 and early 18, Atkins of North America was contracted to build out a roadmap, a mobility roadmap, to help FAST organize around several strategies and goals to expand the focus, to expand their focus beyond better signal operations, but to include improved overall mobility for the whole valley. So what we're going to do today is basically bring you up to speed on that effort and show how it's related to the other innovation projects that are underway currently at the RTC, and more importantly, how they connect to the overarching goals of the RTC: enhanced mobility, efficiency of the surface transportation network, and enhanced experiences for all users are some of them. We're going to talk about some of the lessons learned. We had some trials and tribulations. Great progress was made on some things, and less progress was made on others. We'll review that, and then finally suggest, and this is the bulk of the presentation, finally suggest a new path based on the latest trends and recommendations for improving system-wide performance of the transportation network across all modes of travel. And you'll have the pleasure to hear from Ati on that. So that's my opening remarks. We can go to the next slide. And I think Brian will take it from here.
Right, so I'll give a brief summary of some of the things that we covered in the previous effort. So the goals, and these continue to be key goals in terms of safety and mobility and efficiency, is to identify the needs and the challenges, understand how the appropriate ITS strategies can be integrated into what we need to cover here, and then also continue to learn about and deploy emerging technologies where appropriate. So moving to the next slide. So these were the 5 focus areas from the previous efforts, and they continue to be key focus areas for us now and moving forward. They are also very consistent with what's happening in the Dismal world. Myself and others have been very close to what the feds are doing and what other leading states are doing, and we have been in alignment with those best practices. Obviously, data management is a huge one, and then that data can be used to drive the different planning decisions we make. The data can be used to help with the signal operations and measuring the performance and identifying areas that need changes and opportunities. We want to look at things from a multimodal perspective, so that includes transit, pedestrians, bicyclists, all modes of travel. And then, as I mentioned, we want to make sure that the emergency technology is being used in the best way, leveraged appropriately. We don't want to go too far down a path with technology and find out that we were too early or weren't prepared for it. So on this final slide of my talking points, we provide you with a grid. So if we could see the next slide, please. We provide you with a grid of what has been happening. So you can see the 5 topic areas at the top of the screen that we were working on. you can see 4 goals that RTC and our partner agencies have, which is to connect people to opportunities and services, reduce congestion, increase capacity, improve safety, have data-driven insights, and then also leverage the right opportunities with the federal grants. So the more dots you have in a cell means more attention, more work has been done on that particular one, and then we can also see where there's opportunities to do more work moving forward with this particular effort. And then in that far column, you see the status. So you can see activities that were completed, such as the RTC macro transit pilot. You can see projects that were deployed, and so they are underway. You can also see projects that have been initiated. You know, the one that hits the jackpot down there with 3 dots in each one of the cells is the Go Med project. And so that's where we're working collectively with our partner agencies to expand on the autonomous vehicle, autonomous shuttle success that we've had during previous deployments downtown, and link up downtown in the Bonneville Transit Center with the UMC Medical District, plus also do a lot of data work, pedestrian safety, and other technology-driven enhancement. We received a grant a couple of years ago and have made good progress on a lot of the documentation and everything that has to be done as we move forward towards actual deployment of that project. So a lot of work has been completed, and now we're ready to take a fresh look at where things stand and where we can move forward. And with that, I will turn the slides over to Ati.
Thank you, Brian. This is Ati Abba with ACUS North America for the record. I'm excited to be here to walk you through some highlights of the lessons learned from this mobility roadmap experience and how we'll be tying this experience to the next steps within RTC moving forward. So we all know and have witnessed, especially in the past few years, that the transportation landscape is rapidly changing. Around the nation, we've seen several changes with respect to how we provide and utilize transportation, and also prioritize transportation as a service. Here, locally in Southern Nevada, RTC is focused on a lot of things, including integrating innovation and technology, focused on being at the forefront of the community's needs and working to improve quality of life and modernize everything like we always do. To achieve these goals for RTC and to ensure we stay up to date with the changes in transportation trends, as I mentioned earlier, we've learned through the mobility roadmap experience that there's a need for a systematic framework to really help us identify at the regional level, what are we trying to achieve, how are we trying to achieve it, and where and when is this going to happen? These are 3 key questions that we should always ask, and please keep these 3 key questions in mind as I will be referring to them throughout the presentation moving forward. So this means that we need a unified strategic direction that is supported by formalized governance processes and procedures that will help us implement our modern, innovative, and emerging technology projects, or our traditional transportation projects, of course. Next slide, please. So our current approach is partially aligned with this systematic framework that we looked at in the previous slide. We are in the process of identifying our innovation goals, as you see on the left. And these goals will be refined and developed as a formalized regional strategic framework. We also know where and when and what type of activities and projects we want to implement the mobility roadmap experience and all the other projects that Brian was referring to in this slide. Those are all the specific projects and activities that we want to implement and we want to move forward with. The lesson learned, what we learned from the mobility roadmap experience, and what we need to focus on moving forward is this middle piece of the puzzle. We need a more formalized processes and procedures to make sure we're all utilizing this systematic framework as a region. Now, to achieve this, we're considering the Dismal framework. And next slide, please. So some of us may have heard about Dismal, but let's talk about it in further details for a few minutes before we discuss how we could apply it to RTC and how we will apply the framework to RTC. TSMO, TSMO stands for Transportation Systems Management and Operation. To the left of this slide, we've provided the MAP 21 definition for TSMO, but in reality, it can have different meanings based on how we decide to incorporate this framework into our day-to-day business, and that's the virtue of this program. To me personally, having worked on several TSMO projects, it's a shift in the way we do business. The definition of TSMO to me is celebrating the openness and integration that is required in keeping up with this changing transportation landscape and trends. Now, what does this mean, and how is TSMO going to help us do this? We've listed them on the right-hand side, and I'll walk you through the figure on the right. As we listed, TSMO will help us manage the growing demand that is a result of population growth, the result of a population demand. We cannot build our way out of congestion. It's the reality that we do not have enough resources to keep up. But because TSMO is a performance-driven approach, the framework will help us find the right balance in resource allocation to those areas we want to focus on within our transportation business. The framework will help us improve our day-to-day collaboration between both internal and external stakeholders. We want TSMO because we need an integrated program to help us maximize our existing infrastructure before we consider capacity projects. And of course, this doesn't mean that we will no longer have any capacity projects, but it will help us address the source of congestion, whether it's recurring and non-recurring, by first prioritizing our existing infrastructure and maximizing the efficiency of our existing infrastructure. Next slide, please. Now, the framework, as I mentioned earlier, helps us implement this systematic approach in addressing our transportation needs, asking, again, those three questions of what are we trying to achieve, how are we trying to achieve it, and where and when will help us develop the TSMO framework for RTC. Once we start our analysis and assessments, the framework will help us identify those missing pieces, those areas for opportunities that we need to focus on through the questions that it asks. These questions are typically, these are the questions that we typically don't ask in our day-to-day business. We don't take these elements into consideration. But this framework is designed in a manner that targets those specific areas within the agency to understand our strengths and our opportunities. Beginning with, as we have on this slide, the strategic elements that are the what question, what are we trying to achieve, followed by the programmatic elements, that is the how question, and those specific tools that we'll utilize to achieve our objectives. And then finally, the tactical elements, that is the where and when question. Tactical elements are those specific projects and efforts that will happen at the service layer level in providing transportation services to the community. Next slide, please. Now, why? Why is this so brilliant and special? Of course, it's not that magical solution that would address all our transportation challenges, but it will provide us with the required tools that we need in addressing those challenges. Through the strategies offered in TSMO, we will be able to have more efficient and effective use of our existing network capacity to work with what we have. Again, it's not eliminating the need for capacity improvement projects, but it will prioritize our existing infrastructure. Alleviate bottlenecks while minimizing the need for capacity improvement projects. The TSMO strategies will also help us build a safer system. So whether you're a traveler using the transportation system or a responder, you have a safer system available to you. The strategies will help us provide a more reliable service for commuters and shippers, and of course that helps us enhance our economic competitiveness, which is definitely one of the strategic goals that we're focused on here in Southern Nevada. We will enable enhanced mobility through state-of-the-art technologies and strategies offered by Dismal. And last but not least, data collection and performance measurement, key element in Dismal. It will measure our performance using facts and figures. Next slide, please. So to have a better understanding of this concept, we'll compare the current life cycle of a project to when Dismal is integrated, basically a kind of a before and after Dismal scenario. The project life cycle, as you see on the left, typically begins with the planning stage, then moves into the design stage, then delivery, and ultimately to maintenance and management. Now, in this process, we may or may not collaborate efforts. Typically, in a traditional business process, these efforts happen in isolation. And we do collaborate and integrate efforts, but it happens on an as-needed basis. So really, judging by our typical processes and procedures, if we don't have to, then we don't do it. But with Dismal, as you see on the right-hand side, we will ensure that our efforts are integrated. And everything and what we do within each division through the life cycle of a project is supportive of another division. This approach will not only help us succeed in our division, it will also helps the success of the agency as a whole moving forward. I just wanted to quickly take you back to that definition of Dismal again. Remind you that in the definition, as we said, it's management and operations. Currently, these efforts are either not integrated or are integrated at a very minimal level. But with Dismal, they will be integrated. Back to my point of the fact that transportation landscape is changing, we will reach a point that we can no longer succeed working in our silos. Ultimately, we'll need to start connecting the dots. And to have a better understanding of how this before and after scenario works, let's take an example. Let's apply an example to this slide, such as connected vehicles. If we want to plan, design, deliver, and maintain a successful connected vehicle program, we can't plan, design, operate, and maintain in isolation. At planning stage, we need to take all those design, delivery, and maintenance components taken into consideration. We need to plan for all of those. And then when we get to the design stage, we need to ensure that it's a successful deliverable. It's something that we can efficiently maintain and manage. And the same applies to delivery and maintenance. With Dismal, we'll take all these necessary steps into consideration, making sure all the efforts and components are aligned, making sure we just take that extra step to make sure everything is moving in the same direction. What makes this even more captivating, in my opinion, is that this framework can be as flexible and as agile as we want it to be. Yes, Dismal will provide us with those core components, but it's our decision on how we want to shape it to our needs. Next slide, please. So what's next and how could we move forward from this point? Typically, there are some initial steps that we should that should be taken into consideration. Dismal is a program that is fully supported by FHWA. There are several success stories around the nation with Dismal programs and Dismal frameworks. DOTs and agencies are highly encouraged to begin Dismal with a CMM self-assessment workshop. CMM stands for Capability Maturity Model. This model includes the 6 dimensions, as you see on the screen: the business processes, systems and technology, performance measures, culture, organization, and staffing, and collaboration. And if you really look at it, these basically cover all the layers and aspects of a business. It takes them all into consideration. So through the self-assessment workshops with CMM, we will get together with all the internal and external stakeholders. We'll have the opportunity to discuss how mature are we as far as TISMO capabilities are concerned today. We do have some examples of TISMO strategies already going on, but how mature are we as far as ensuring that systematic framework is completely applied to our business processes? This workshop, this process, this self-assessment will help us identify those areas of strength and areas of opportunities. And then we will develop a list of action items, which leads us to the second step. Next slide, please. Which is to develop a business case. Business cases are typically developed to demonstrate how TISMO adds value to us and to our business. What you see on the screen is an example of the business case that we developed for NDOT last year. And you should all have received a copy of this attached to the agenda for this meeting today. So if you want to look at the attachment in further details, as I will be walking you through the development process of this example. So in this example, we focused on, for NDOT, we focused on statewide transportation challenges and listed them all on the top row. Then we identified the needs, basically figuring out what's the need to help us address these current and future challenges. Then we looked at the benefits of TISMO directly related to our challenges. So understanding how exactly is TISMO and its strategies and solutions are helping us address these challenges. Final step was to identify whether local or national examples of application of TISMO strategies that have helped address these challenges, whether locally here in Nevada or in other states around the nation. We found various examples and case studies based on facts. So we just listed a few of them in the bottom row to show the TISMO contribution in addressing those needs. So for NDOT, the business case was based on transportation challenges. For other DOTs and agencies, it could be on something else. For example, for North Central Texas Council of Government, the business case for the TISMO program was based on performance measures for before and after studies of projects. For Iowa DOT, for example, it was based on recurring and non-recurring congestion and safety measures. So as I said earlier, it's very flexible to whatever we decide to target within RTC. And the best thing about it is that it creates a proven case on how we can address our challenges without the need for a major investment in a capacity improvement project. Next slide, please. So final step, last slide, is the development of the TISMO framework through developing a TISMO program plan. This plan, this document, will serve as a guide for us on how to basically begin implementing TISMO, those specific step-by-step actions that we need to undertake through developing the strategic elements, the programmatic elements, and the tactical elements, which are again those three famous questions of what are we trying to achieve, how are we trying to achieve it, and when and where is this going to happen. So many DOTs and agencies either have or are in the process of developing and implementing TISMO. As I said earlier, what TISMO means to us may be different from what it means to others. It is made of the same core components, yes, but at the same time is flexible enough to allow us to really shape it to whatever we want it to look like. And that's the beauty of it. That's all I had for you today. Thank you for listening to me. I understand and acknowledge that this may sound like a complex concept, but it really isn't. What makes it sound so complex is that it's an interdisciplinary program and takes several layers and aspects of the transportation business into consideration. But trust me, as soon as you start connecting those dots, then there is an aha moment that everything will start falling into place. With that, I will pass it on to John.
Yeah, thank you very much, Atia. I appreciate that. I really liked your connected vehicle example. That really highlights the importance of integration and communication between all the stakeholders. For that to work, everybody's got to be on the same page. So, Mr. Chairman, before we, John, I'm sorry, I forgot the housekeeping. John Penuelis, RTC, for the record. Before we open it up to questions, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to sum up.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Why this committee? Why did we bring this to you folks? It's no coincidence that the Transportation Systems Management and Operations and the Operations Management Committee share two words together: management and operations. As I have said before, and I'll remind you again, one of the reasons OMC was established back in 2005 was to provide instructions and direction to the FAST director to formulate policy, establish operational procedures and principles identified as transportation management strategies for different elements of the transportation network: freeways, arterials, bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit. These strategies typically occur during the morning rush, the afternoon rush, weekends, non-peak hour, special events, construction, incidents, and maintenance activities. What was called transportation management strategies back in 2005 has morphed into what Ati just explained to us. Transportation systems management and operations. It's this has come about because people have come to the realization that the transportation network is really a system, and it's not just a collection of individual components that do particular things. It is an integrated whole of technologies and interests, and this is the thing that keeps us all employed. The competition between those interests, and sometimes even the technologies. So it requires management to operate the system in the most efficient way possible, and TSMO can provide that framework. Adi explained that TSMO helps sort out those competing interests. That's the bottom line. It helps harmonize and improve the network for all users. To put it very simply, we want to squeeze every possible second out of the existing system, and that's where we want to add the capacity. We want to add capacity through improvements in operations and efficiencies. Obviously, there are going to be plenty of opportunities to put pavement on the ground, and that is part of the overall strategy. Eliminating sawtooths out there is an example of that. But we also want to look for efficiencies where we can find them. So based on what you heard today, I'd like to have the committee form a working group, which you are authorized to do, to review the current transportation strategies that FAST has adopted, review the initiatives, and there are many underway at the agencies along this front, review NDOT's TSMO plan, which is in place and is being implemented, and basically decide on the merits of pursuing a local TSMO plan for all the reasons that Ati outlined. So that working group, I can't imagine more than a meeting or two, really dig into the details on what we would like to see, and then if the working group feels that it's necessary, a recommendation could go back to the general committee, and there could be direction to staff to start the procurement process for a consultant to help us formulate this plan, or it might be more efficient to start off with an in-house effort and see where that goes. So lots of options, but we would like to get the conversation started. So no need for a motion at this point to form that working group or anything like that. We will contact each of you and see how you feel about that, and move in the appropriate direction. So that's all I had, Mr. Chairman, and I think all three of us would be happy to answer any questions the committee had.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any comments or questions? If there are no questions or comments, we will move on to the next item. Mr. Hoft.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Hoft, again for the record. Item 6 is to discuss new transportation technologies and their use in measuring, monitoring, and enhancing performance on Southern Nevada roadways. And so a good transition from what Ati and JP mentioned is what's happening with connected vehicles. And we continue here in the Valley to be very active with that. Myself, along with the city of Las Vegas, namely Joanna Wadsworth, and also Aptiv, Veronica Vicente from Aptiv, have been having regular conversations about the progress of the program that has already been deployed with the Aptiv Lift program out there and the roadside units. One of the topics that's happening right now is that these roadside units are going into dual mode. What that means is that there are two competing types of technology out there. DSRC, which is dedicated short-range communication, and also connected vehicle, CV to X, connected vehicle to all items. And a dual mode roadside unit will have the capability of having receivers that can handle both types of communication. And then on the other side, with vehicles, different OEMs or original equipment manufacturers, those are the General Motors, the Fords, the big companies that make the vehicles. Some of them are going in the direction of DSRC, some of them are going in the direction of CV to X, and so that's something that continues to be a conversation in all of this. We also happened to have yesterday a conversation, and either yourselves or people from your agency attended. Tracy Larkin Thomason, the Deputy Director for Nevada DOT, has been working with Toyota and one of their folks, and so we had a conversation about connected vehicles from their perspective and exchanged some good information. We learned from Toyota interesting ideas. The Toyota representative was very impressed and very encouraged and excited about everything that we have going on here. So that continues to be something that generates a lot of conversation. And then also collectively, a lot of us continue to participate in what is known as Project Blackjack. That is where Cisco has come in and is doing work in the city. And so that includes the IT departments, it includes traffic operations. Here at the Traffic Management Center, both our comm maintenance side and our operations side are involved in helping get that rolled out. So technology continues to be something that is at the forefront here in the Valley. So that constitutes my remarks for this item, and I'll take any questions or comments that anyone may have.
If there are no questions or comments, we will move on to the next item. Item 7 is to discuss topics of interest. Does anyone have anything they would like to share with the committee? If not, moving on. Mr. Hoft.
All right. Thank you, Chair Reisman. Brian Hoft for the record. The last item on the agenda is the final citizens' participation.
This is the second time set aside for public comment. Just a reminder that comments will be limited to the first 500 words, with the remaining words to be included in the written record. Do we have any comments?
Thank you, Chair Reisman. Mayor Dubois for the record. There are no public comments at this time. That concludes your comment period.
Thank you. If there are no additional comments, I will close the item, and this meeting is adjourned.